You are trying to escape the very place God has positioned you. Right now, in this very moment, the thing you are working hardest to get away from may be the very thing He has placed underneath your feet as a launching pad. I know that sounds hard to believe. Maybe right now, as you are hearing this, you are in the middle of a season that feels like it is suffocating you. Maybe you have been praying the same prayer for months, asking God to move you, to change your situation, to open a door, any door, because the one you are standing in front of right now feels permanently sealed. You are tired. Not the kind of tired that a good night of sleep fixes. The deep tired. The kind that settles into your bones when you have been hoping for a long time and the answer still has not come. You are frustrated. And underneath the frustration is something quieter and more frightening, a whisper that says maybe God has forgotten about you. Maybe He has moved on. Maybe the plan He had for you passed while you were not looking, and now you are just standing in a hallway that leads nowhere. But what if the place that is causing you the most pain right now is the very place God is using to prepare the greatest breakthrough of your life? What if the waiting is not wasted? What if the closed doors are not punishments, but protections? What if everything you are walking through, the confusion, the silence, the delay, is not the absence of God's hand, but evidence of it? If you miss this truth, you could spend years running from the very thing God is using to build your destiny. So stay with this. Be still for just a little while. What you are about to hear could change everything. There is a difference between being abandoned and being positioned. Most people, when they are in a difficult season, assume the first. They feel the weight of their circumstances. They look at the distance between where they are and where they believe they should be, and they draw the conclusion that they have been forgotten, that God looked away at the wrong moment, that somehow they slipped through the cracks of His attention. This is one of the most painful lies the human heart can believe, and it is also one of the most common. Because pain has a way of distorting our perception. When we are hurting, when we are stagnant, when the vision we carry inside of us seems to be gathering dust rather than gaining momentum, the enemy does not need to attack us with something dramatic. He only needs to plant one quiet question: has God forgotten you? And in the silence that follows, in the absence of an obvious answer, the lie starts to take root. It whispers that other people are moving forward while you are standing still. It whispers that the promise has passed, that the window has closed, that you missed your moment. And if you are not grounded in the truth of who God is and how He operates, that whisper can grow into a conviction that shapes every decision you make. But here is what the Word of God declares, and it does not waver, it does not negotiate, and it does not offer exceptions. Psalm 37, verse 23 says that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, not some steps, not the easy steps, not only the steps that feel good and productive and forward-moving. All of them. Every step is ordered. Every pause is intentional. Every season of waiting has been accounted for in the architecture of God's plan for your life. Romans 8, verse 28 goes even further. It says that all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to His purpose. Not some things, not the pleasant things, all things. The delay is working. The silence is working. The hard season you are in right now is working together for a good that you cannot yet see. Think about a builder constructing a great building. Before the walls go up, before the floors are laid, before the interior is designed, before anything that other people will ever see or admire is assembled, the builder spends time on the foundation. Days, sometimes weeks, working underground, working in the dirt, working in a place that looks, from the outside, like absolutely nothing is happening. Someone walking by the construction site during the foundation phase might think the project has stalled. They might wonder if the builder forgot about it. They might even assume it was abandoned, that someone started something grand and then walked away from it. But the builder knows exactly what he is doing. He is not distracted. He is not confused. He has not forgotten the vision. He understands that everything beautiful, everything lasting, everything that will be able to withstand wind and weight and time depends entirely on what is laid down in that invisible, unglamorous, underground phase. The taller the building, the deeper the foundation must go. And God, the master builder of your life, operates by the same principle. He is not wasting this season. He is not spinning His wheels. He is laying your foundation. The depth He is building in you right now, in this quiet and difficult season, is directly proportional to the height of what he is preparing to build on top of it. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are being positioned for something that will require exactly the depth he is building in you right now. But sometimes the place God positions you does not feel like preparation. It does not feel like a construction site with activity and progress and the sound of things being built. It feels like nothing is being built at all. It feels quiet in a way that is unsettling, empty in a way that aches, and still in a way that makes you wonder if you have been overlooked. It feels like a desert. The desert is a place most people want to escape as quickly as possible. There is nothing comfortable about it. There is no shade, no water in sight, no clear path forward, no landmarks that tell you how far you have come or how far you still have to go. The desert strips away everything that is not essential. It imposes a kind of silence that, at first, feels like abandonment. In the desert, you cannot distract yourself with busyness. You cannot drown out the noise with noise. The desert forces you to be alone with yourself, and more importantly, alone with God. And for many people, that is the most frightening experience they have ever faced. The children of Israel spent 40 years in the wilderness, 40 years wandering in a place that should have taken 11 days to cross. That is not a travel delay. That is not poor planning. That is a transformation program, intentional and precise. God was not confused about the route. He knew exactly where the promised land was. He had promised it to them. He had shown it to Abraham centuries before. The promise was real. The destination was certain. But he also knew that the people he was bringing into that land were not yet ready to inhabit it. They had Egypt in them. They had been slaves for 400 years. And slavery does not leave a person just because the chains are removed. It lives on in the way you think about yourself, in the way you respond to authority, in the way you handle freedom when it comes. The slave mentality, the scarcity mindset, the dependence on the approval of others, the fear that drives people to build golden calves when they feel uncertain about what God is doing, those things had to come out. And the wilderness was the place where God did that work. It was not a place of punishment. It was a place of purification. Deuteronomy 8 verse 2 says that God led them through the wilderness to humble them and to test them, to know what was in their heart, whether they would keep his commandments or not. He already knew what was in their heart. He was giving them the opportunity to discover it for themselves. The wilderness reveals what comfort conceals, and that revelation, as painful as it is one of the most loving things God can do for a person he has called to greatness. The desert is not a punishment. The desert is a curriculum, and in the desert, specific things die, and specific things are born. What dies in the desert is the part of you that God cannot use for the work he has ahead. The pride that would make you forget where your strength comes from, the desert starves it out quietly, day by day, until the arrogance that once felt so natural becomes something you can barely remember. The self-reliance that would cause you to step out ahead of his leading and make a mess of something that was meant to be beautiful, the desert dismantles it by systematically removing every resource you had been depending on, instead of him. The need for human validation that has been quietly competing with your need for his voice, the desert strips it away by placing you in seasons where the approval of people is simply not available, and you are forced to discover whether the voice of God alone is enough to sustain you. The attachments to comfort that would make you turn back rather than push forward. When the road gets hard, the desert burns them off, one by one, until what is left is a person who has learned to walk forward, even when the way is not comfortable, even when the outcome is not certain. In the desert, those things lose their grip on you, not because you conquered them through willpower, but because the conditions of the desert simply starve them out. And what is born in the desert, what grows in that dry and difficult place, is real. It is faith that has been tested and not found wanting. It is patience that has been stretched beyond what you thought you could endure. It is character that has been refined by the very heat that you once prayed would stop. Isaiah 40, verse 31 promises that those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. But notice the condition: those who wait. Waiting is not passive. Waiting is an active, deliberate act of trust. It is choosing, every single day in the middle of the desert, to believe that the God who led you here has not abandoned you here. But preparation is only part of the story, because even after the desert season has done its work in you, there is still the question of timing. And this is where so many people who are sincere, people who are genuinely seeking God, people who have done the hard inner work, make a critical and costly mistake. They get ready, and then they get restless. And restlessness, when it is not surrendered to God, becomes one of the most dangerous forces in a person's life. We live in a culture that worships speed. We want results now. We want answers now. We want the breakthrough to happen on our timeline, in our way, according to our preferred sequence of events. And when God does not move at the pace we have decided is reasonable, we start to help Him along. We start to force doors open. We start to make moves that are not yet sanctioned, to say yes to opportunities that look good on the surface but carry a quiet uneasiness we choose to ignore. We rush. And rushing, when God has said wait, is one of the most costly decisions a person can make, because not every opportunity that presents itself is from God. There are good opportunities and there are right opportunities, and those are not always the same thing. A good opportunity can take you off course just as effectively as a bad one. The enemy rarely comes to you with something obviously destructive. He comes with something that looks almost right, something that is close enough to your dream that you could convince yourself it is the answer. And if you are running on impatience rather than discernment, you will not be able to tell the difference. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 declares that there is a time for every purpose under heaven. God does not only decide where you go, He decides when you arrive, and the timing is not arbitrary. The timing is calculated with a precision that accounts for every variable in your life, your readiness, the readiness of the people connected to your purpose, the conditions that need to be in place for what He has planted in you to actually flourish. John 10, verse 27 says that His sheep hear His voice, not just the content of what He says, but the timing of when He says it. Learning to hear His voice means learning to wait for His word before you move. Think about a piece of fruit that is pulled from the tree before its season. It looks like fruit. It has the shape of fruit, but it is hard and bitter, and it will never give you what it was designed to give you, because it was not given the time it needed to become what it was meant to be. Your destiny, pulled into too early, works the same way. What was designed to be a blessing becomes a burden. What was meant to be a platform becomes a prison. God is not slow, He is precise. And when you learn to trust His timing rather than fight it, you stop wasting energy on doors He has not opened, and you start cultivating the ground He has actually given you. And sometimes, God does not use circumstances to guide you. He does not use the opening and closing of doors, or the shifting of seasons, or the internal nudge of His Spirit in the quiet of the night. Sometimes He uses something far more personal, far more relational, far more human. He uses people. The relationships in your life are not accidental. The people who have appeared at key moments in your journey did not wander into your path by chance. God sends people as part of His positioning strategy. He sends the mentor who sees something in you before you see it in yourself, who speaks a word over your life in a moment of doubt that you carry with you for years afterward. He sends the friend who stays through the seasons when everyone else leaves, who does not require you to be further along than you are, who sits with you in the dark without rushing you toward the light. He sends the leader who gives you an opportunity at exactly the right moment, who opens a door that your own resume would not have opened, who takes a chance on the version of you that exists now, rather than waiting for the version you imagine you will eventually become. He sends the stranger who says exactly the right thing, at exactly the right moment, on a morning when you were seriously questioning whether to keep going. These are not coincidences. These are appointments. Proverbs 27 verse 17 says that iron sharpens iron, and one person sharpens another. God designed human beings to need each other, not as a weakness, but as a wisdom. He builds His purposes through community, through covenant, through the specific people He assigns to specific seasons of your life. But here is the part that is harder to accept. God also uses the people who hurt you, the ones who betrayed your trust, the ones who spoke against you when you expected them to stand with you, the ones who closed a door in your face that you believed they were supposed to open, the ones whose actions sent you in a direction you never would have chosen for yourself. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers, not by enemies, not by strangers who had no reason to care about him, by his brothers. The people who shared his blood, who grew up with him, who knew him, the people who should have been his greatest advocates, were the ones who stripped off his coat and threw him into a pit and debated his fate over a meal. And then they sold him for 20 pieces of silver, and they watched him leave. Joseph was not a minor character in an old story. He was a real person, and that betrayal was a real wound. The confusion of it, the grief of it, the disorientation of finding yourself enslaved by the people who were supposed to love you, that is not a small thing. And yet, decades later, standing in a position of authority that none of them could have imagined, Joseph looked at his brothers and said words that should be framed on the wall of every person going through a season of betrayal. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Genesis 50, verse 20. What looked like destruction was actually direction. What felt like abandonment was actually advancement. The betrayal that Joseph experienced did not delay his destiny. It was the very vehicle that carried him toward it. This does not mean that what was done to you was right. It was not. But it does mean that God is sovereign, even over the wrong things people do to you. Nothing and no one has the power to permanently derail what he has authored for your life. Not every person who comes into your life is sent to stay. Some are sent for a season. Some are sent for a lesson. Some are sent to carry you from one chapter to the next and then release you into what God has ahead. The key is not to hold on too tightly to what God intended to be temporary, and not to let go too quickly of what he intended to be permanent. Ask him for the discernment to know the difference. After God positions you and places the right people around you, the next thing he wants to do is grow you. And the way he grows you often looks nothing like what we imagine growth should look like. In our minds, growth is visible. Growth is upward. Growth is public and measurable and accompanied by some sign that tells the world and tells us that we are making progress. But in God's economy, some of the most significant growth happens in the most invisible places. It happens underground. It happens in the dark. It happens in the season where, from every external measurement, it looks like absolutely nothing is changing. A seed, before it becomes anything visible, must be buried. It is placed in the ground, covered in darkness, surrounded by soil, and left there. From above the ground, nothing appears to be happening. There is no evidence of movement, no sign of life, no indication that anything is taking place beneath the surface. Someone who did not understand how seeds work might look at that patch of ground and conclude that the seed was wasted, that it was buried and forgotten and will never produce anything. But under the surface, something remarkable is happening. The seed is breaking open. Its outer shell, the protective casing that kept it contained and dormant, is splitting apart. And out of that rupture, a root is pushing downward, anchoring itself, establishing the invisible infrastructure that will one day support everything that grows above the soil. Jesus himself spoke to this in John 12, verse 24, when he said that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone, but if it dies, it bears much fruit. The death the seed experiences is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of it. And what you have been calling loss, the season where everything seemed to fall apart, where the thing you had been building seemed to crumble, where the future you pictured seemed to dissolve, may not be loss at all. It may be the breaking open of the seed, the shattering of the outer shell that was too small to contain what God has placed inside you. What you are calling failure may be the root system forming. What you are calling a setback may be the anchor going deeper. What you are calling a delay may be the invisible infrastructure being built for a harvest that will be so large that the small version of your life could not have supported it. You are not buried, you are planted. And there is an enormous difference between the two. Buried things are meant to stay in the ground. Planted things are meant to rise. But there is a critical truth that comes next, one that separates the people who eventually flourish from the people who stay frustrated season after season, circling the same mountain, wondering why the breakthrough never comes. It is a truth that is simple to say and genuinely difficult to live. You must learn to grow where you are planted, not where you wish you were planted, not where you plan to be planted someday, right here, right now, in this season, in this circumstance, in this soil that feels too dry and too hard and too ordinary to produce anything remarkable. This sounds simple, but it is one of the most difficult spiritual disciplines a person can develop. because the human heart has a tendency to believe that the grass is greener somewhere else, that the blessing is waiting in the next city, the next job, the next relationship, the next season. And so people spend their lives perpetually in transit, always moving towards something new, never allowing their roots to go deep enough in any one place to actually produce the fruit they were created to carry. A tree that is constantly uprooted and replanted cannot bear fruit. Fruit requires rootedness. Fruit requires stability. Fruit requires the willingness to stay in the ground long enough for the invisible work to become visible. Psalm 1, verse 3, describes the person who delights in the law of the Lord as being like a tree planted by streams of water, that yields its fruit in its season. Planted, not wandering, not searching, not perpetually moving, planted. This does not mean that God will never move you. He will. His seasons are real, and there is a time to go and a time to stay. But the move must be His direction, not your frustration with the process. Before you can be moved faithfully, you have to grow faithfully in the place where you are. The blessing does not begin somewhere else. It begins in your obedience here. It begins in your faithfulness now. It begins in the daily choices you make to root yourself deeper in prayer, in the Word, in worship, in community, in quiet surrender, rather than chasing the mirage of a better version of your life that exists just past the horizon. The habits that will produce your future harvest must be cultivated in the soil of your present season. The character that God is building in you right now, in this difficult and unglamorous place, is the character that will be required to sustain everything He is preparing to give you. And if you run before that character is formed, you will find that the blessing becomes a burden. The platform becomes a trap. The opportunity becomes a source of anxiety rather than joy, because you did not allow the roots to go deep enough to support the weight of what God had for you. The fruit that God has planned for your life is real, but fruit grows in its season, not yours. Stay planted, go deep. Stop evaluating this season by what you can see above the surface, and trust what God is doing beneath it. Trust the process. The tree is not dying. It is becoming the kind of tree that can bear the weight of everything it was created to carry. And when you have gone deep, when you have learned to grow where God placed you, when you have stopped asking for the next season and started being faithful in this one, something remarkable begins to happen. The atmosphere around your life shifts. What was resistant becomes receptive. What was closed begins to open. Doors that no one could open for you, no one could close. Doors that no one could close for you, no one could open. When God decides it is time, He moves with a swiftness that makes the waiting feel like a dream. God does not forget His promises. He stores them. He holds them with a fidelity that outlasts every discouragement, every disappointment, every season of silence. The promise He spoke over your life, the one that felt so alive in you years ago and now feels like it is covered in dust, has not expired. God's word does not have an expiration date. It does not diminish with time. It does not lose its power because the circumstances around you suggest it is impossible. What He said, He will do. What He promised, He will fulfill. But He prepares the person before He delivers the promise. He does not hand you the harvest before the roots are deep enough to sustain it. He does not put you on the platform before the character has been formed to handle what the platform brings with it. David was anointed king years before he sat on the throne. In that gap between the anointing and the coronation, he fought lions and bears in obscurity. He survived a jealous king's repeated assassination attempts. He lived in caves, eating whatever he could find, leading men who were in debt and in distress and discontent. He watched people he trusted betray him. He sat in a darkness so deep that many of the psalms he wrote during that season still read like cries from the bottom of a well. And yet in every one of those moments, God was not absent. God was authoring. Every hard moment between the promise and the fulfillment was making David into the kind of king that could actually lead a nation, could actually bear the weight of authority without being destroyed by it, could actually say at the end of his life that he had sought after God's own heart. The gap was not punishment. It was formation. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness as a shepherd before he stood before Pharaoh. 40 years. In the economy of the world, that looks like a life wasted. A prince reduced to herding sheep in a desert, far from the halls of power, far from any stage that would suggest his life mattered. But God was doing something in those 40 years that the palace in Egypt never could have accomplished. He was stripping Moses of his dependence on his own eloquence, his own position, his own ability to fix things through human effort. He was teaching a future deliverer what it meant to be completely, utterly, non-negotiably dependent on God alone. And when the time came, Moses did not have to force his way into his calling. God came to him. God met him at a burning bush in the middle of the desert and sent him directly into his destiny. You will not have to force your way into yours either. You will not have to manipulate circumstances or manufacture momentum or convince people to give you an opportunity you were designed for. When God opens the door, it will be undeniable. The confirmation will come. The provision will arrive. The people who need to be in place will be in place. You will know it is His timing because it will carry His peace, not the absence of challenge, but the settled knowing that you are exactly where you are supposed to be, doing exactly what you were made to do. All you have to do is be ready. All you have to do is stay faithful in the small things while you are waiting for the large ones. God is not looking for perfect people. He is looking for surrendered people. He is looking for people who stayed when it was hard, who kept believing when the evidence was thin, who chose His voice over the voices of doubt that were louder and more persistent. Be that person. Be ready when the door opens. But here is something that must be said, because without it, even the most beautiful breakthrough can become hollow. Without it, you could receive everything you have been praying for and still feel an emptiness at the center of it that you cannot explain. Without it, success becomes a destination that disappoints you when you arrive. The purpose God is leading you toward is bigger than your personal success. It is bigger than anything you could achieve for yourself alone. It is bigger than the title on your business card. It is bigger than the number in your bank account. It is bigger than the public recognition, the platform, the applause of people who finally see what God placed in you. Those things may come. There is nothing wrong with them, but they are not the point. Ephesians 2, verse 10 declares that we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. The word handiwork in Greek is poema, from which we get the English word poem. You are God's poem. You are not an accident. You are not a draft. You are a carefully composed, intentionally crafted expression of God's creativity and love, written into the world to communicate something that could not be communicated any other way. You were not created for comfort. You were not created for accumulation. You were created for contribution. You were made with intention, with precision, with a specific assignment that no one else on earth can fulfill exactly the way you can, because no one else has your combination of experiences, your wounds, your gifts, your voice, your story. The things that have shaped you, including the painful things, are part of the design. They are not mistakes in the poem. They are lines that carry weight. They are the stanzas that give the whole piece its depth. And God's purpose for your life is not primarily about what you will receive. It is about what you were designed to give. This changes the way you look at everything. It changes the way you look at your gifts, not as personal assets to be leveraged for advancement, but as tools God entrusted to you for the benefit of others. It changes the way you look at your pain, not as a liability to be hidden, but as a credential that gives you access to people who are walking through what you once survived. It changes the way you look at your platform, not as a stage for self-promotion, but as a place of service. When purpose is your North Star rather than success, you stop striving and start surrendering. You stop performing and start being. And something in you relaxes in a way it never could when you were chasing achievement, because you are no longer carrying the weight of having to prove yourself. You know who you are, you know whose you are, you know why you are here. And that knowledge is a freedom that no amount of external success can manufacture. When you step into your purpose, your life stops being about you. And that is the moment it becomes most powerful. That is the moment it starts to carry a weight and a resonance that cannot be manufactured, cannot be marketed, cannot be faked. Because people can tell the difference between someone performing their purpose and someone actually living it. And when they encounter someone who is genuinely living out what God made them for, something in them awakens. You were not created to keep the light to yourself. A candle lit in a dark room does not apologize for shining. It does not dim itself out of modesty. It does not wonder whether it is worthy of giving light, whether its flame is strong enough. whether anyone actually wants what it has to offer. It simply burns. It gives everything it has, and the darkness has no choice but to retreat. Matthew 5, verse 16 says, "Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." Notice that the goal is not that people see you. The goal is that people see your Father. Your life, when lived faithfully and purposefully, becomes a window through which others catch a glimpse of the God who made you. The life you have been living, the story you have been walking through, the pain you have survived, the faith you have held on to in the dark, all of it is becoming something that other people desperately need. Your testimony is not yours to keep. Your healing is not only for you. The things God has brought you through are being stored up as medicine for someone who has not yet found their way through. There are people in your life, people you will meet, people you already know who are sitting in the same darkness you once sat in, and they are wondering if there is a way out. They are wondering if God is still there. They are wondering if their situation is too far gone for grace to reach, and then they will encounter you. They will hear your voice, they will see your life, and something in them will crack open. Something in them will dare to believe again. Your life, lived faithfully, is an act of ministry. Every day you choose to trust God in the hard places, you are preaching to someone who is watching. Every time you refuse to let bitterness take root, every time you choose worship over complaint, every time you stay submitted to what God is doing, even when you do not understand it, you are becoming the living evidence that God is real, that His promises are true, and that no person who trusts Him will ever be put to shame. That is the weight of what you are carrying. That is the magnitude of what you are being prepared for. When you walk into your purpose, people will be healed. People will be set free. People who had given up on God will find their way back to Him because of you, because of your honesty about your brokenness, your willingness to testify about the desert you walked through, your courage to stay when every instinct was telling you to run. Families will be restored. Hearts that were shut will reopen. The faith of someone standing at the edge of their last moment of belief will be renewed because they heard your voice and recognized the truth in it. The ripple of your obedience will extend far beyond what you will ever be able to see on this side of eternity. And that ripple begins here. It begins in this season. It begins in the ordinary, unglamorous faithfulness of the days you are walking through right now. The most important question, not about God's ability, not about God's timing, not about God's faithfulness, all of those are settled. The question is about you. Are you willing to say yes? Not yes when it gets easier. Not yes when you can see the whole plan. Not yes when the desert is behind you and the door is open and the path is clear. But yes, right now, in the middle of the waiting, in the middle of the confusion, in the middle of the season that does not make sense. The kind of yes that costs something. The kind of yes that requires you to lay down your agenda and trust His. The kind of yes that walks away from the need to control the outcome and steps into the freedom of trusting the author. The kind of yes that Abraham gave when he left everything familiar and stepped into a land he had never seen, with only the Word of God as his compass. The kind of yes that Ruth gave when she refused to let grief and practicality send her back to the safety of what she knew, and instead chose to follow the God she had come to believe in, even when staying seemed unreasonable, even when the road ahead was uncertain. The kind of yes that has always been the hinge upon which great seasons turn. God is not looking for people who have it together. He is looking for people who have decided to trust Him more than they trust their own understanding. He is looking for the surrendered yes that says, "I do not know what you are doing, but I believe you are good, and I am staying." This is the moment to stop running from the place God has positioned you. This is the moment to stop fighting the process and start trusting the processor. This is the moment to stop asking why you are in the desert and start asking what God is building in you while you are there. Think about everything you have heard today. You are not abandoned, you are being positioned. The desert is not punishment, it is preparation. God's timing is not delay, it is precision. The people in your life are not accidents, they are assignments. The hardship is not burial, it is planting. The soil you are in right now is not a mistake. It is the place God has chosen for your roots to go deep. The door that is not opened yet is not locked forever. It is waiting for the moment when what is on the other side of it will not overwhelm you, but will complete you. The entire journey, the positioning, the desert season, the waiting, the planting, the hidden growth, the right relationships, the open doors, the purpose, the impact, all of it has been leading to this singular invitation. God is not asking you to understand everything. He is not asking you to have it all figured out. He is asking you for your trust. He is asking you for your surrender. He is asking you for the most powerful thing a human being can offer to the Creator of the universe, the willing, deliberate, daily choice to believe that He is good, that He is in control, that He has not forgotten you, and that everything He is doing, even the things that hurt, is working together for your good and for His glory. Let us take a moment right now, wherever you are, however you are feeling, whatever season you are in. Will you pray with me? Father, I come before you right now, and I do not come with all the answers. I do not come with everything resolved. I come exactly as I am, tired in some places, hopeful in others, unsure about many things, but willing. I choose to be willing. I thank you that you see me in this season. I thank you that you have not looked away. I thank you that the place where I am standing right now is not an accident, that my steps are ordered by you, that even the steps that confused me and the steps that hurt me were steps that you ordered, steps that are working together for a good that I am beginning to trust even when I cannot yet see it. I ask you to heal me from the wounds of the waiting, where disappointment has built walls around my heart. Break them down. Where hope has been deferred and the ache of that deferral has made me pull back from believing, breathe life into those dry places again. Make my heart soft enough to receive what you are bringing and strong enough to carry it when it arrives. Give me wisdom for this season, Father. Help me to grow where you have planted me, not to run from the soil you have chosen, not to uproot myself in search of ground that looks more promising, but to go deep right here. Help me to pray more faithfully, to seek your word more hungrily, to serve the people around me more generously, to stay submitted to the community and the leaders you have placed in my life. Teach me the discipline of waiting without wasting. Help me to trust that the desert is not a dead end but a place of formation, that the silence is not absence but preparation, that the closed doors are not rejection but redirection toward what is truly mine. Lord, I ask you to align my life with your purpose. Not my version of purpose, but yours. Let me stop building monuments to my own ambitions and start building the things you dreamed for me before the foundations of the earth were laid. Reveal to me the assignment that only I can carry, the gift that only I can give, the people only I can reach, and then give me the courage to show up for it imperfectly, faithfully, fully. I surrender my timeline to you. I surrender my preferred outcomes to you. I surrender the need to understand before I obey. I choose today, in whatever hard and unseeable place I may be standing, to trust you, to believe that the seed you planted in me is alive, that the roots are forming, that the harvest is coming, and that nothing the enemy has done has the power to stop what you have ordained. I receive your positioning. I receive your preparation. I receive your timing. I receive your purpose. Have your way in my life, Father, completely, freely, fully. In the name of Jesus, amen. You are not forgotten. You have never been forgotten. Not in the middle of the night when you cried and no one heard. Not in the season that stretched longer than you thought you could bear. Not in the moment when the thing you trusted most fell apart in your hands. God saw you in every one of those moments. He was there in the silence. He was present in the desert. He was working in the hidden places where human eyes could not reach. And he has not stopped working, not for one moment, not for one breath. The God who created the universe with a word is not overwhelmed by your situation. He is not confused by your circumstances. He is not scrambling to come up with a plan. He had the plan before you had the problem, and the plan is good. You are not too late. The promise is not expired. The door is not permanently closed. The harvest that was spoken over your life before you were born has not been canceled. It has only been cultivated. God does not waste a single day of your journey. He does not waste a single tear, a single prayer, a single moment of faithful endurance in a hard season. Everything is being woven together with a precision and a love that is beyond your ability to fully comprehend. Everything is building towards something. You are not stuck. You are not behind. You are not running out of time. You are exactly where the eternal God of the universe, who numbers the hairs on your head, and calls the stars by name, has placed you. And he placed you here with a plan that is more beautiful than anything you could architect for yourself. Your season of flourishing is coming. Not because you earned it, not because you suffered enough to deserve it, not because you finally figured out the right formula, but because God is faithful. Because what he begins, he completes. Because the same God who breathed life into you, who formed you in secret and called you by name, does not do incomplete work. He does not start stories. He does not finish. He does not plant seeds. He does not intend to water. He does not make promises he cannot keep. The morning is coming. The fruit is forming. The roots you have grown in this dark and difficult season are about to become the foundation of something extraordinary, something that will outlast you, something that will bear fruit long after you are gone, something that will bring glory to the God who positioned you, prepared you, planted you, and never once stopped believing in the person he made you to be. Trust him. Stay planted. Keep going. God is positioning you exactly where your purpose will flourish.